Good morning, friends. Today, we can start the SQL Server installation. And before going to the SQL Server installation, we need to check from few key top discussion or maybe points. Okay. So whenever we get a new SQL Server installation, always we need to understand the requirement, then install the SQL Server. Okay. So installing the SQL Server is a straightforward, and we can use the software, and we can install the SQL Server. That won't take much time. It's always we can go for a graphical user interface and we can install. But the thing is before installing the SQL Server, we need to understand what is the requirement for the SQL Server to install, and what is the expected size for the our business. The business means like how many databases we are going to create, and what are the database size that we are going to keep, and what is the size of for that database, and is there any high availability we need to configure, and how can we provide the access to the that particular database server, and we need to check other security areas. So the thing is whenever we going to install a new SQL Server or onboarding the any customer, generally in the background, the sales team or business team will work. Okay. Why? Because uh, they will decide the business, and they will charge the customer to maintaining their business to our environment, right? Our environment means the customer will provide the requirement. Based on that, we we will install the SQL Server, and will provide the better performance. The thing is here, the SQL Server is a software, right? We are going to install the SQL Server software in the virtual machine. That may be Linux machine, or that may be a Windows machine. But the thing is we need to get the requirement, the customer having the huge business, and they may need this much of a disk space required. So accordingly, we can allocate the disk size. That is the one thing. After onboarding the customer, also we can increase the database size. But the thing is that would require the downtime. So that's the reason we require the database size. And one more thing is we require the collision setting. The collision setting is nothing but how the data is going to sort and stored in the our SQL Server software. So generally, like a collision setting, you can call a nothing but a log base. How the data is going to retrieve and store in the SQL Server. Generally, the thing is by default, the collision setting is a Latin underscore general underscore CA underscore IS. That is a common collision setting for the SQL Server. But sometimes the business is running on the China, and some business running on the Germany. So that time we would require the collision setting according to the business requirement. So if the support is from the Germany, that means we have to select the based upon the German collision setting. So that the developers team or business will tell we need the collision setting related to the Germany side. So accordingly, we need to select. That is the reason after installing the as a by default, if you want to change the collision setting, there is no straightforward to change it. We have to go for rebuild the our SQL Server. Then only we can change the collision setting. That is a very difficult to change the collision setting. That is the reason we have to get the collision setting from the our business. That is a very important for the collision setting. And one more thing is like we need to get the requirement. The business is required for any high availability. Okay, so high availability means like a log shipping, mirroring, and replication. Uh, like the what we have a edition site like enterprise edition and standard edition, web edition, right? So those enterprise and standard majority these things will support like replication, log shipping, mirroring, and replication. This will support. But coming to the always and availability groups, so standard edition also it will support, and enterprise edition also it will support. But the thing is like if you go for standard edition, there will be some limitations. As we discussed it in the past, the high availability in the standard edition, there will be limitations for the some read access on the secondary servers. So that should be we need to consider. And if the customer is a bigger customer, they're paying for uh, uh, they're paying for the what we're going to provide. Then we can go for enterprise. But the customer is not that much of paying. Why? Because enterprise edition is a little bit cost in the license, but standard edition it's a not compared to enterprise. It's a free cost, like a lower cost. It's not a free. We need to pay for license, but not that much compared to enterprise. So that is the reason we need to check the high availability, and also we need to consider what is their business. Okay, are their business is a 24/7 or any kind of a 24/5? Why? Because if you then 24/7, we we cannot go for standard edition. Why? Because we have a limitation on the index rebuilding operations. Okay, that rebuilding operations we cannot online operations on the standard that only support enterprise. But even though, as I mentioned, customer is not paying that much, we can go for standard, and we need to inform the door business like this DBA maintenance activities. So that also we need to consider. And one more thing is like what are the this customer we are going to install, right? Like can we keep this customer in the shared environment or dedicated environment? Okay, so the thing is like shared environment and dedicated environment we need to consider. Why? Because if the customer is not much security, like whatever, there is no SOC control and other things, then we can consider we can keep that particular database server in the uh, shared environment. The shared environment means like what are the software we are going to install, that software like that particular customer instance or software is going to share the our virtual computer CPU, memory, and as well as the disk. Okay, and not only for that, the shared database server means like we can install the one SQL server, and we can keep multiple databases in the one SQL server. So that time, can we keep all the customer database in the one SQL server instance, or else can we go for each customer? Can we go for separate instance, and we can provide the resource even though we are going to share the CPU memory. Disk can be divided, but CPU memory that cannot be divided. So those we need to decide. And sometimes if the customer is very like high critical and they are bothered about the SOC control and the other areas, we can go and install that particular software in the dedicated hardware and software. That means like we are going to install that particular software in the dedicated virtual machine. In that dedicated virtual machine, we are should not install any other customers. So that thing we can check with our business and as well as the management. So the thing is like that too depends upon the cost we are going to save and how much customer is going to pay. If the customer is not going to that much pay, like they're okay to keep in the dedicated what I meant to say uh, data shared environment. The thing is like the same customer, they have multiple locations or multiple companies. Okay, that time we can go and install that particular instance on the one computer. So those terminology and things you can slowly understand, but you need to remember these key topics. Okay, the thing is like the most important is what is the collision setting and are they required in availability settings, and what is the customer database size, and how many users are going to connect. Why? Because we have some standard formula, like formula means like the business, this many number of users are going to connect. Accordingly, that software required this much of memory and CPU, so that we can request the to build the Windows virtual machine to the from the Windows team. Why? Because if you want to install the software, we would require one computer, right? So we need to collect this information and we have to provide the information to the Windows team, so that Windows team will build the our computer. So that is a one thing. But apart from that, some other prerequisites is there. These prerequisites we need to get from the business. Okay, these are we need to make sure these are the topics discussion. Generally, we'll discuss from the database manager and sales team and architect. Once we get the information, and we can go and install the SQL server. Okay, so before installing the SQL server also, we need to consider some other areas as well. So this is the one thing. Yeah. So expected size, required collision, high availability, client access, and performance. Yeah. So let me. This all we all got from the customer and business. Then we need to check the other what I meant to say hardware and software requirement before installing the SQL server. Let me take one MS Paint. So this is the virtual computer. So this virtual computer, the uh, requirement and other areas we need to give to the information to the Windows team. Why? Because once we provided the inputs, then Windows team will build the computer. Once we get the computer, then only we can go and install. The other thing is like without getting this information, okay, we should not start the our installation. Otherwise, in the future, we'll get a problem. So these things will provide from the your architect or maybe data management will provide this information. Here, there is no necessity to join the or get the all the meetings from the entire DB team. Generally, like architect and database managers, other people will involve the sales team and business and client, and they will discuss the all the key areas, and they will provide the inputs to the our DB team. So, but right now we are on the L1 or L2 and other kind of a position. But in the future, you may promote as a L3 or architect. Right? So that time, if you join these meetings, we need to ask the key point topics if the management not aware. Why? Because we need to provide some technical topics to the business so that they can understand. Why? Because sometimes the business and the sales team not much aware of the this cost areas. Why? Because they will like think about the software you're going to install, that will be take the cost same as for all the edition. But here the thing is like the cost will be error rate. So you have to provide some inputs to the our sales team, our business team, if you want to go for this software, we need to pay this much. And if you're going for this much of database size, disk, this much of amount we need to pay. And if you're going for the CPU and RAM, this much of amount we need to pay for the Windows. And if you're going for install the one VM, we are going to pay this entire VM cost to this customer. And we need to provide the some cost estimation for before installing the onboarding the customer, so that accordingly our business and sales team will charge the uh, that much of amount from the customer. the, Here the thing is like providing the cost estimation is not the same as from the we are going to customer. Why? Because that is only for the cost estimation for the only for maintaining the resource. The resource like a VM cost and SQL Server license cost, Windows license cost, and storage cost, and the public IP address cost, and a public network, some other. If you go into configure any things, VPN cost, and some other software's cost. Apart from that, our management and sales team is going to charge like if you're going to maintain this environment, we would require the Windows team, we would require developer, we would require database team, right? So they will also consider and they will also code the quotation. That will be, it should not be like visible for the team. That is a separate team will take care. But you need to provide the cost only for the resource which we're going to keep in the database. The other cost environment, the management will showcase to the business that won't visible for us. But the DBA perspective, we need to provide this cost estimation to the sales team so that they can include this cost and again other cost to the like why? Because once we install the software and with that particular Windows, the Windows team has to go for Windows patching and every month. That is a kind of a activity, and we are going to monitor, right? So that also monitor we need to pay, right? And the database team also has to support if something goes wrong, right? So they have to pay for a database team, right? And if something required for any modifications or their business, right? For that application team also required, right? So for that also application, how many the teams they going to provide the like salaries, right? So those things business team will uh, consider and they will. But from our side, we need to provide this cost. This cost will be, we have a each and every environment, we have a cost calculator. Using that cost calculator, that we need to provide how many cores and how many RAM we are going to provide, and what are the disk we have, is there an availability, and those things. Once you provide this information, it will provide the cost. Then the cost and we have to provide to them. They can do that. So this is the pre-discussions. But the thing is like uh, uh, once we get the this number of users and size, then we have to request to the our Windows team build the computer. So the thing is like, so this is the software. This is software we are going to install our virtual machine. So we need to provide the this Windows. Sorry guys, you can see some background noise. Okay, virtual machine. Okay, spelling mistake. Control it. Virtual machine. So this virtual machine will build the, sorry, network is, Okay. Yeah. So this virtual machine has to build the from infrastructure, right? So for that we need to provide the inputs to the our Windows team. Like what are those? Like we need this many disk. Like how many disk we required? How many disk we required? Okay. Why? Because uh, there is some standard like disk kind of a divide portion. Why? Because we are going to install the software, right? So once we install the software, after that we are going to onboard the customer data, right? So for that we are going to create the user database. So each and every database we have a like a data file and log file, right? So for that, for keeping the data file, we required one separate disk, and keeping the user log file, for that we required one separate log disk. And we are going to install the our software, right? So when we install the software, that software will get the some the default databases. So keeping the default databases, we would require one disk. And and also once we install the software, right? So this default databases, we have a one default database called temp database. So for keeping the temp database, we would require to keep the temp database in the dedicated disk. So the thing is like how many disk we require and what are the those sizes. So one disk is for user data files to keep. One disk is for log files to keep. One disk is for to keep the system database except temp.db. One disk one disk is for system database temp.db data and log file. Anyway, one disk will come like a OS. So this many disk we required, and for data disk, what is the size we required? That thing we need to mention. A log file, what is the size? And the thing is like keeping to the system database, we won't require that much of size. Okay. This is the third one. System database, generally we can go for 128 GB, not more than that. So for other things, they can go for initially 256 or 512 or 1 TB. But the thing is like in the future also they can scale up. But once we add the disk, it's very difficult to scale down. So that is the reason. Initially, we will go for a smaller disk, and the future will go for increase the scale disk. The other thing is like we need to consider and we need to provide the this what are the disk they're going to attach. Okay, we have to provide what is the disk IOPS we required. Okay, so each and every disk, like generally we will go for like a SSD disk. So sometimes what they will do, they will attach HDD disk. So if you go for HDD disk, the performance is very slow. So SSD will go. But the thing is like if you're going for SSD also, we need to provide the some disk IVAPs. Like what are the disk input operations? Like there could be some uh, numbers. We have to provide that. That numbers also will come based upon the disk size. But if you're not providing the disk IVAPs, this many disk IVAPs we required, they will provide normal disk IVAPs that will give the kind of some performance issues. So that is the reason we need to provide this many disk required and this many disk IVAPs we required. Okay. So disk IVAPs I will provide like generally how many disk IVAPs required if you're going to keep the database. So these information we have to provide, and also we need to provide the information to the Windows team like what is the Windows OS we need to go. Okay. So generally what they will do, they will go for the latest operating system. That may be right now 2019 or 2022. If you're not providing the operating system, sometimes what they will do, the Windows team having their golden image. Okay. The golden image means like they will keep one image for the database servers. Whenever the new customer came, they simply use their particular image and they will install. Why? Because that golden image, all the security and monitoring tool will be installed. Simply they will pick the image and they will install. So if they're going to pick the golden image, that golden image may be having legacy operating system. So that is the reason we need to provide the operating system information as well, so that they will go for the latest. And we need to provide them uh, what I meant to say, this VM required public IP address or not. So that public IP address we can attach later also, but the thing is like we need to provide this information. Why? Because sometimes the most of the database servers we did not recommend to go for public IP address, but sometimes we can tell public IP address required. Uh, some rare cases. Why? Because if you want to communicate our software outside of the domain, outside of the organizations, that would require VM would require public IP address. Okay, these things we'll get it from the while onboarding discussions. Why? Because sometimes the customer will provide tell I need the software apart from application. I also required from like their environment. Their environment is a dedicated network, right? So if you want to like communicate this virtual machine to outside of the network, that VM required public IP address or VPN. So if you go for VPN, that would require again some extra cost. So sometimes that is the reason we'll go for the public IP address. So then this information also we have to provide. The other thing is like the major thing is like we have to inform the Windows team or storage team what are the disk we are going to attach. Those disk should be 64 KB disk format. Okay, this thing is a very key note from the DBA team. So generally, what are the virtual machine or computer is going to build, that by default it will come 4 KB. Okay, but what are the database servers we are going to keep? Those what are the disk is going to attach? That particular database VM should require 64 KB disk format. Okay, these things we have to inform them. Application servers and some other servers to keeping the 4 KB, that's fine, but 64 KB disk should be attached to the our virtual machine. So why we need to keep 64 KB? Why not go for 4 KB? So let me show the some one line difference from the 64 KB and 4 KB. Okay. So I would recommend it to use from your side Copilot for your day-to-day activities. Okay, that will provide some uh, most of the kind of like a Microsoft white paper document. Let me go for here. So why? Because we recommended go for 64 KB. Like when we like last class we discussed it, how the data is going to store in the operating system. Like the data is going to store in the MDF, right? That MDF file we are going to keep in the our physical storage, right? So whenever storing the data is storing fitting into the one page, right? So 8 pages we can call like a extend, right? So 8 page into 8 KB like a 64 KB extends. So generally operating system, if you going for 64 KB, that extent it will fit in the one block. Otherwise, it has to dividing into the two different blocks. Then we can see some IO operations contentions. So that is the reason. The main thing is like we need to go for 64 KB extends from the operating system. So the thing is like we would think the data will be stored on the 8 page in the database, but actual data we are going to store in the disk, right? That disk format also we need to consider. If you go for 64 KB extents, the entire extension will fit in the one extent instead of going for other things. That is important. And one more thing is like, so uh, each and every operations it will go for single operations per extent, but it has to go for more IO operations need to read from the right 64 KB. Why? Because the 4 KB cluster size that will provide the more blocks in the window size. So if you want to get the read data from the data, it has to scan in the back end blocks. That would require to scan the more blocks. If you keeping the into the one block, the scanning is very easy. All the data will be sitting into the one extent in the storage level. So that is the reason we would require to keep in the 64 KB cluster for the database VM. So the thing is like, how can we check it? So the thing is like, we inform it to the Windows team, but how can we rely? Did they give the 64 KB uh, cluster disk or 4 KB cluster disk? So for that we have a command we can check from our side as well. Okay, so these things we can check it from the command prompt or else uh, uh, PowerShell as well. So just open the command prompt. Okay, open the command prompt, run as administrator, open the run as administrator, then like, yeah. So you need to run this command. This is the command to check the our disk level format. Okay. So here last letter we need to change it. Suppose if you have a D drive or E drive or F drive, and you need to change this address IP like drive disk format, and you have to change it. Once you run it, what it will provide? You need to look for the bytes for cluster. If you see 4096, that is a 4 KB. Other than like the thing is like here, if the 64 KB, what is the number? If it is the 64 KB, the number we can see 65655536. If it is 4 KB, the number should be 4096. So we have to inform the Windows team, and we need to inform them, boss, we would require this much of custom format, so that they can do and give the things. So that is the reason. If you want to avoid the duplicate work, we have to inform this information prior. Otherwise, what will happen? Uh, Once we install the SQL Server, if you want to change the disk format, that could be required data loss. So always we need to keep remember these things from the disk level format. And the other thing is like we need to ask one more thing from the Windows side. We would require what I meant to say, the service accounts. Okay, the we are going to install the, so the thing is like what are things we covered, how many disks we covered, and disk format we covered. And other thing is like we need to ask service accounts. Okay, this is the important service accounts. So we are going to install the software in the our virtual computer, right? So while installing the software in the server manager or service.msc, this particular software related service will install. Okay, once they install these things, this particular software needs to operate or serve the business, right? So in the background, the some service accounts which will serve the resource. What are the resource required? Like sometimes it has to communicate outside of the this virtual computer, that would require to access the saved resource from the other machines as well. So not only for that, some security side privileges, okay, to provide. So that means like the service accounts is nothing but a Windows accounts. Okay, that Windows accounts will provide the required resource to serve the our software. Okay, that is the reason we required service account. And what are the service account we are going to keep or run the our software? We would require to get the domain accounts. Okay, so the thing is like what are the software we are going to install? That software requires some accounts to uh, uh, provide to run on the our computer. Okay, so that may be local accounts or that may be domain accounts. But from the DB perspective, we would require go for the domain accounts. The domain accounts, why? Because the domain accounts are created from the central repository in the domain controller, DC. So because the service accounts are created from the domain controller, so that that service accounts can able to access the all the computers which are part of the same network. That means once we install the particular service accounts to the our software can able to communicate the this particular virtual network, and it can able to read and it can able to write with the help of the service accounts. So that is that only one thing. And in the future, if you want to configure the high availabilities like mirroring and always availability, at that time we would require uh, to run the software as a service accounts. So that is the reason we always to avoid the duplicate work, and we can ask the Windows team to create the two domain accounts in the uh, DC. Okay, so that what they will do, they will create the account. The account is nothing but a one login. Okay, that but that login, the what they will do in the they won't they will set like a the account your and password they will set as a not expire. Why? Because if you set as a expire, whenever you go for after 90 days or 30 days, the account may be expired or password will be expired. If the that particular account is expired, then our software will go down. Why? Because our software in the background servicing will run with the help of the service account. If the service account itself is down, then our software will be down. So that is the reason. If you mention as a service account, the Windows team, they will create the accounts and they will set as a password policy and export policy as a non-expire, so that will service account won't go down. And also they will provide the permission as a read and write permission, so that this account can able to read and write the data across the domain which are aligned to this particular computer. Okay, so service account we would require. Generally the service accounts we will ask for our software a business requirement. The thing is like, when we going for the our software installation, the software having some features or services. Those are called like database engine and SQL Server agent and reporting services, integration services, and analysis services. Okay. So generally the database team majority cases will go for, definitely we would require database engine that will take care the entire business. So database engine we required one service account, and we would require one service account for SQL Server agent to provide the kind of a automation accounts and to configure the some other availability things that would require the SQL Server agent. Apart from that, we have a reporting services. So the reporting service would required for the business requirement for reporting purpose. So that also we would require one service account. And we have sometimes we have a integration services. That time we'll go for integrations. So generally we'll go for the database engine and SQL Server agent and reporting services. In the latter also we can add the other features, integrations and analysis service. If you want to require those features as also, we can install. But from the DB team, we can responsible for the database engine and agent and as well as the reporting services. We will install the reporting services, but configuring the report builders and configuring the data sets, the application or development team will take care. So you can understand those things slowly one by one. But now you can understand the service account. So here, the service accounts, we need to ask how many service accounts we require. So the thing is like, for the we have a business or same business or same client or maybe one product. That time each product or each business we can go for one service account, okay, across the all the services. Or sometimes we need to go for dedicated service account for each instance. That would depend from the our business. Means like our management, our DBA architect will tell. Suppose we have a 40, 50, like 450 SQL servers. That time we would require 450 service accounts. I could say we won't require. We can require the as per the client and as per the domain and as per the things. Why? Because in the organizations we have a dedicated domains and dedicated DC. We have a separate OU. OU means like the user information controls. Okay. So for that, based upon the OU and domain, we have to maintain the service accounts. So generally we will maintain 5 to 10 service accounts. That service accounts we can give the while installing. So the service accounts will information will stored in the one security location by keeping into the service account name and password. So while installing, we can go and check that security location. We can pick it. So now we can go for the definition. What is the service account? The definition will go for. So what is the service account? The service accounts are the Windows accounts, and these Windows accounts are assigned to the our SQL Server service to run it. Okay. So this Windows accounts for domain controller accounts, or maybe that particular dedicated computer account. We would recommend go for the domain controller accounts. So this using the service accounts, all the background task will performed by using the service accounts. Okay. So because I need some CPU, I need some memory, I want to interact our SQL Server database engine outside of this computer. That would time I would require some extra permissions to connect our SQL Server. So who is going to handle those? Those all background task will maintain from the service accounts. So the single definition is the service account is the background task. All each and every task will perform from the service accounts. These service accounts are from the Windows accounts. Generally, these service accounts are local accounts or Windows accounts. The Windows accounts like a domain control accounts. The domain control accounts, the users and the passwords will maintain in the central repository. Okay, that's it. The key definition from the service accounts. So these service accounts, we need to request the our Windows team so that they will create. So this is the information we have to provide to the our Windows team. Okay, that is the one thing. Like before providing the virtual machine, we have to provide this information to the Windows team so that these things. And the other thing is like we got the computer and we got the this virtual machine. We want to install. So before installing the our software, we need to check the hardware and the software requirements to install this particular computer. Why? Because each and every software some dependency to install. So I have a software. If I want to install this software, this virtual machine will run some operating system, right? That operating system should be compatible level, and apart from that, this software will dependency for the other components like a PowerShell and some .NET framework. Why? Because our software mainly designed in the build with code .NET framework. Right? So if you install the software to our computer, this computer required some .NET compatible or some .NET related services should be installed. So that is the reason we need would require to check software and hardware requirements. So the hardware, like we'll go for the here check in the our documents. What are the hardware software requirements? SQL Server 2019. Some Microsoft document will get. So these are the hardware requirements. The hard disk. So SQL Server require minimum of 6 GB available in the hard disk. Why? Because we are going to install our software. That software itself, it will take some amount of storage on the disk, and it will also some binaries and other software while installing. So that is the reason at least we would require 6 GB. If the less than 6 GB, then our software won't install. In the real time, we have so much of plenty of space. Okay, but that is like our standard documents. What is the required from the storage? The storage should be minimum 6 GB, and the coming to the RAM. Okay, so if it is express edition, at least we would require 512 MB on the RAM on the our computer, and other editions that would require 1 GB. Okay, at least 1 GB. So in the real time, we will go for like start with 8 GB or 16 GB or more than that. Okay, that to business upon the depends upon the business, but this is the minimum requirement for the memory side. 512 memory requirement if you go on for express edition. If you are going to install the other editions, that would require 1 GB. Why? Because we need to remember this requirement interview will ask sometimes. Okay, and what are the processor speed? Okay, what the CPU speed? What are the process we would require? That would require 1.4 gigahertz. Jet. The recommended is 2.0. So these things, how can we get it? Like if you go for Windows 32, Windows 32, system 32, 1 minute, system, system 32, system, yeah, system information. Shortcut is system 32. If you go for system information, we can see hardware resources. So that would require what I meant to say, the process speed. Okay, 2 gigahertz. This is fine. If you see less than, we have to tell them, boss, the process should be required this much of speed. And the thing is like the memory. If you go for memory, we can see here at least we would require some memory. If you see uh, less than some amount, then we can tell boss we would require these things. But in a way, we are going to provide the our hardware and software requirement, right? Accordingly, they will build it, but we need to check it. And other thing is like our system is like a 32 bit or 64 bit. Let me see. System type 64 bit. As I mentioned, if it is Win 32, we can see 86. Then we have to inform them, boss, we required 64 bit, not for the 34 bit. And one more thing is like, yeah, so this is system type and CP memory. We need to check it. Then what are the other areas? The software requirement. So the operating system, what is the operating system we would require? Okay, if you install the things like Windows 10 also we install, but recommended thing is like we would require Windows Server 2016 or a greater, and .NET framework like a 3.5 or more than 3.5 we would require. So .NET framework also we would require. So this is the hardware and software requirement we need to provide the our Windows team. So generally they have some standard checklist they will do, but as per the DB team, we are the responsible and we have to provide this information. Otherwise, once you install these things, for going for a rebuild, it will take a longer time. So this is the before installing the our software in the computer, this must we need to check like what are the hardware and what are the software. Even though if you provide this information to them as also. Any other thing is yeah. These things we already covered like 4 KB 64 bytes. Yeah. So now come here. What are things we covered? Disk, how many disk we have, and disk format, and service account, and we covered hardware and software requirements or checks. And mm, yeah, wait. Now let me go for install the one software. Then we can discuss uh, one by one in the next class. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to install the software. But now, right now, I will show the installation, but later class I can go and explain each and every component in the our software. Why? Because the next class will be coming Saturday, right? So in between, you can do the some practice like creating the database and creating the primary key and unique keys and some other things, right? So right now, uh, I will go and install the one SQL server. We can discuss in the other components in the next coming lesson. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to download the SQL Server standard edition in our software. Okay. So thing is like this is the link. Okay. So this is the link. You can go and uh, browse it. Once you browse it, come down. If you want, you can go for 2017. If you want, go for 2019. We can go for 2022, but that 2022 is kind of like a we have some drawbacks. Not drawbacks. And the Microsoft, what they did, they disabled some uh, uh, features on the developer edition for practice. If you go for 2019, we can see all the activities. So better to go for 2019, and we can do the uh, all the lab practical. And while going for upgrade and migrate, what we can do, we can install 2017 and we can go for upgrade from 2017 to 2019 upgrade projects. So now I already downloaded the software. Okay. So once you download the software, what you need to do, this will come like this. Okay. Now once you click the right click, run as administrator. So here, once you go to the this particular link and you just double click it, what it will do, it will download the software. Okay. Once you download the software, in the downloads, we can see these are the things. So don't directly go and install the software here. What you need to do, first you need to download. If you go for run as administrator, it will ask basic or download or some other thing. Let me go for. So go for download media. If you go for basic and custom, it will install the software every time. We need to go for a download and install. So instead of that, what you can do, just download the media first. Once you download the media to the our system, okay, this is the things. Once we downloaded, we can see the file like this one. Okay, so you need to download. Once we download it, we can see the this one. Then from here, we need to install our SQL Server instance. So let me go and install quickly. Next coming Saturday, we can discuss each and every component. Right click, already mounted. We have to mount it. Okay. Once we mount it, what we will do? The software will come as outside and it will provide the some binaries. Okay. Let me mount it so that you can understand. Once it comes, right click, mount. So the mount means like we can see like a F drive. Previously, we don't see F drive. What will happen when we move into the click the mount? That will be mount as like a F drive. And in the real time also, don't install as a mount of the outside of the F drive. You need to copy the media to the some other location and you have to install. we'll discuss if you go for here, what is the drawback? Okay, why? Because the software will think like this is the DVD and F drive, and core components will be installed from here. Later, if you install any patches, that will imagine think like previously we install as a D drive, DVD, F drive, that would require to insert the DVD, but we don't have this much of drive. So that is the reason. Once it mounted, what you can do, you can copy this entire software, entire copy the software. You can keep it into the one location. Like you can create a software and you have to paste it. So what I meant to say, once we mount the disk or storage, not a storage, like our software, you have to copy the entire software. You have to keep it in the one folder. So what I mean to say, after mount, don't go and directly install the software from the mount. You have to copy the entire software files and copy to the one particular location. From there, you need to install. So once we mount it and copy the files, we can see setup.exe file. This is the application file we are going to install. So what you can do, right click and install. The thing is like we need to decide while installing the software, do we want to go for default instance or named instance? If you want to go for named instance, what is the name we are going to provide? Okay, that thing will decide before installing itself. So right now, once we click the software run as administrator, what we can do in the installation, go for installation. The planning, no need to go for installation. In the left hand side, we can see installation. Then the middle of the page and the right side, we can see like a new standalone installation. We have other things we can discuss later, but the thing is like we are going to install the software as a standalone, then go and install our software. So once we right click as the run as administrator, this page will open, then go to the left hand side and then go to the installation. Once you click the installation, then go for the new SQL Server standalone installation. Then click it. So once it click it, it will check the background support process. So it will go for like a hardware and a software things. Okay. The other thing is like in the first, this page will be pop up and don't check this option. Like use Microsoft update for check updates. They will tell us the recommended, but don't check it. Okay. Why? Because if you check it, the Microsoft will send the email. Whenever they release any patches or any upgrade, they will send a communication to us. So some organizations it will tell go and check it, but from my perspective, don't go and do it, and I never recommend it from my side as well. Okay, so otherwise we will get a lot of communication emails to the our uh, registered email address emails to for the updates. So don't click this one, then go for the next. So here it will checking the some uh, install setup files. So our software is going to install that that would require some setup things. Okay, the thing is like if you see Windows firewall as a warning, no need to bother about. You can go and install. If you see any error, then we have to check why. And one more thing is like as I mentioned, if the .NET framework like that would require 4.72 or higher version. If it is below 4.172, it will fail. If it is fail, then we need to install the Windows team to install the .NET framework. So this .NET framework we can also install from our end, but better to go for Windows team. They will install the .NET framework. And from our end also, we can install the .NET framework from the our computer from the operating system, from the server manager. So right now I'm using as a normal operate machine. I cannot see the server manager. But if you go for the normal kind of a Windows systems, we can see the server manager. So next class we can see the like a installation on the our virtual box, that we can see like a actual server. That time we can see the server manager, and we can see the install the server manager from our side as well. But the thing is, like, requirement is .NET Framework 4. Should be 4.7 is required to install the 2019. So don't click next. Now the thing is, like, I mentioned, right? So default instance are named instance. So here I already installed the default instance. That is the reason uh, here. So it is asking two buttons. Do you want to add the new features? Okay, to the minus 2022. Let me go for let me go for 2019. 2022. Copy. Then software 2019. We'll keep it here. Let me cancel this one. Yeah. Now I'm going to install 2019. Right click, run as administrator. Go for installation. Then go for new SQL Server installation. So develop edition. Go for next. Then I accept. Go for next. Don't click it. Next. Oh, this is taking a long time. Let me stop the recording or pause. Skip.